give some people some time to join us both on the stream that has been provided and YouTube as well. So we're going to probably start around 7:05-ish. So feel free to just sit back and enjoy. Or you can just watch us sit here and twiddle our thumbs and wait for everyone to stare at the computer screen awkwardly. But it's all right. Okay, so it seems like we're 2/3 of the way for those that are going to sign up on Zoom. And for those on YouTube, hello. I said this earlier, but we're going to give it a couple more minutes, let some more people filter in before we get started. Jaleel, I just want to throw it out there that Adam says hi. He misses you in New England and best of luck in Nashville. So just wanted to throw that over your way.
Oh, Adam, my boy, tell him I said, oh, I guess he could hear me. What's going on, Adam? Happy New Year to you. I miss you too, man.
All right, we're going to give it just a couple more minutes and then we will get started. So panelists, feel free to be prepared. Audience, I hope that you enjoy this. All right, so we're going to get started. It is just about 7:05, but hello and welcome to day 2 of the ISC conference. My name is Kyle Carr, and I am a member of the Flock, a supporters group over in Madison, Wisconsin for Forward Madison FC. I'm also the co-founder of Featherstone Flamingos, and that is an all-inclusive supporters group for Forward Madison that celebrates and promotes Black culture. I want to thank the ISC for letting me moderate this panel, which is going to be about Black Players for Change. And thankfully, we have representatives from the Black Players for Change. We also have USL Black Players Alliance and the Black Women's Players Collective. So I appreciate each and every one of them giving their time. There's going to be a great group, and I will just have them introduce themselves. They'll just give their name and the team they play for and the organization or union that they represent. So I'm going to start with Madison.
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, everyone. My name is Madison Hammond. I play for the OL Reign of the NWSL, and I'm a part of the Black Women's Players Collective.
All right, let's throw it over to Matthew.
Hi guys, my name is Matthew Watson. I spent the last 3 seasons playing for the Indy 11 and I'm representing the USL BPA.
All right, Zero.
Hi everyone, my name is Ziara King. I play for OL Reign as well, and I am a part of the Black Women's Player Collective.
Perfect. Jaleel.
What's going on, everybody? It's Jaleel Nibaba here, play for Nashville SC, and I am part of the BPC.
Great. And lastly, Justin.
Hey, Justin here. Defender for Toronto FC and representing Black Players for Change.
And again, I thank each and every one of you for joining us. For the audience, if you have a question, feel free to submit it. We are going to try and answer as many as we can. But I just want to give the disclaimer that if we don't answer your question, we apologize. We're just going to make sure to try and answer as many questions as possible. So I guess the first question that I have for each and every one of you is going to be, what made you want to get involved in your respective, associations, unions, organizations, etc.?
I can start if you want. I mean, for me, that was like a trigger moment, and I think it was when Jacob Blake got shot in the back 7 times. And I know like there were tons of horrific things that happened before that, but for me, that moment really struck close to home. And things like he drove the same car as I had. He had 3 children, and it was just the continued like disrespect of the Black person in America, And before that, like being from England, like I guess I felt a little bit more distant from things, because this is not necessarily my country. But that moment, like for me, it was just like a trigger where like I felt like I had to do something. And the USL BPA had actually already started at that point. I had not heard about it. So as soon as that happened, like I made, ways to get in with that group and try and make some change. So.
Appreciate it. What about you, Zero?
Yeah, so for me, the Black Women's Player Collective is brand new, just, started in 2020. And it kind of came in the midst again of, the craziness that happened with police brutality and the blatant disregard for Black lives in this country. And just the way that, the Players Association was handling, some of the messages and output that really was not representative of the Black voices in our league. And so that's kind of how our player collective came about. And to me, it was a no-brainer to be a part of it. I'm very vocal and I love to, stand up for the things I think are right, especially standing up for the Black community. So yeah, that's what got me involved.
I think just going off what Z said, being a part of the BWPC was like a no-brainer, of course, but what I thought was really important was that Black women make up a really small percentage of the players in the NWSL. And so for us to have a unified voice and message is something really important, because there are some teams where there's only 1 or 2 Black players. And so it can definitely, when there are things outside of soccer happening, with George Floyd and just all these demonstrations happening, but we have a commitment to, adhere to COVID protocols and like stay with our teams and, remain in these isolated situations. I think having the Black Players Collective is just really important, not only for just like how what our voice and message is saying, but also just like from a mental health standpoint, and also just knowing that there are other people who support you and have your back.
Yeah, I think I'll speak for myself only, but I'm pretty sure It was a similar experience for a lot of us in the BPC. It was pretty much almost like a subconscious act to reach out to one another, to basically check up on one another after the killing of George Floyd. Just seeing that, and then seeing, how the media was covering it, and what we all knew was potentially going to come after that, was something that we all kind of were like, whoa, we need to figure out what we want to do in terms of a response. We need to rally around one another to make sure that everyone's all right, and then try to proceed from there. And similar to what was said earlier, I think a decent amount of us were disheartened by the leagues and the soccer community's response to it all, or the lack thereof. So combination of all those things kind of led us to start talking, and then the rest has been a short history so far.
Yeah, for sure. I think the death of George Floyd is definitely the boiling point, or the tipping point for Black Players for Change. And when we first organized, really the empowerment that each of us got from the group is what makes us all able to stand up like we have, and create this organization that hasn't been able to exist before. But I always have a hard time answering this question, because it's, being Black is such a big part of all of us, the microaggressions that we face today, but also wanting to make it better for the next generation. And for me, that's my biggest motivation outside of the external factors. Is just, I have 2 young daughters, biracial daughters, and I don't want them to grow up in a world that I grew up in, facing the microaggressions that I did, both inside and outside of sport, and just wanted to make a better place for them. So I think that's the background for all of us. Like it's a part of us. How could we not step up?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that. And one of the things that I noticed between each of these organizations forming is, this wasn't something that was there before. And I think for a lot of people and a lot of fans that are identifying as Black, it was very important to see it, because, it's one of those where you kind of wonder sometimes whether it's a collective bargaining agreement or even just the discussion of how things are handled. It kind of feels like sometimes maybe Black players aren't emphasized enough, or we're not getting enough Black voices. So the fact that each and every one of you got involved in your respective orgs, I think is going to go a long way for that. And one of the questions that was asked is going to be from Ebony, and this is for the whole panel. What differences do you see between each of the groups, and how do you think those differences are going to help you mesh ideas, help you grow as a Black collective in soccer, and as well as just in your respective organizations?
I mean, I'm not sure if we have like big differences between the groups. I think we're kind of all going towards the same common goals, and I think a lot of this, we'll see the groups work together in some way. I've already kind of bumped into a few of these guys on other things. So in terms of that, obviously a little bit our responsibility is to our own groups, but again, I think overall you'll see that we're kind of working all to the same common goals of looking for representation of more Black players going into organizations, offices and stuff like that, getting into the communities, investing in underserved communities, and the education of what it's like to be a Black player in America.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that each of our different organizations bring to the table is just like the diversity in backgrounds and gender and where we come from. And I think together that will only help not only in decision making, but with continuing the representation for younger Black kids coming up playing soccer.
I think that we're sharing a lot across the different sports and the different groups. One of the best things that I have personally found out of these whole past 7 months of just being more connected to the different professional athletes, all of you guys here today, and all of your leagues and all of the groups that you represent. But I do see a particular marginalization of the Black women, and I think it's at a different level than we face. I know that when they first organized, they had a lot more resistance from their league and a lot less cooperation from their players association. And I think that just goes to represent the overall, like the broader show of the problems that they face compared to what we face. So I think all in all, we're all fighting the same things, and we're banding together to do it. But I think that we're fighting at different levels with different capacities, but we're helping each other out.
And actually, Justin, you actually raised a good point with opposition. And we actually got a question from YouTube about that, in terms of if each of you can share the stiffest opposition you face while pushing for change in the sport, and, you know, both in society and how you try and face up to it and how you try and approach it.
I'll take this one, or I'll start. I think for me, you know, I think that just having all of this happen, you know, like wanting to enact change and be a part of these things, but also being a rookie, it's an interesting dynamic, because I want to be outspoken and I want to speak on what I believe in, but there's also that balance of like, how much can I say where people are going to take me seriously and listen to me? And a lot of the times you get a lot of positive support, because on social media and things like those are the people that follow you, the ones that want to hear what you have to say. So I would say like the hardest times are when you finally come across the person that has something negative or contrarian or something to say that is really challenging, not even just your beliefs, but who you are as a person and how you navigate that. And you don't do it in a way that's just emotionally driven, because then a lot of times people will just be like, well, you're just being emotional. And on top of like what Justin was saying, you're also just being a woman, and you're like, women get emotional and things like that. But being able to like have your message come across in a way that is productive, but also letting somebody know that you've like really upset them. And that can come across in different relationships, whether it's like friends who've come out of the cut in the past year, or, you know, teammates you have to have conversations with, even like just, and those conversations come up in a bunch of different ways. But when those conversations do happen, it's not like we've been equipped or like coached on how to have those conversations in a way that's appropriate. So I think that would be my response.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off of what Madison just said, not to be dramatic or anything, but I would say the stiffest opposition that our organization has faced, you know, during this whole process so far would probably be death threats. Just to put it out there, you know, in terms of kneeling for national anthems and, you know, deciding to boycott games, we definitely had members that have caught, you know, direct death threats. But I think what we've all really understood and, you know, experienced throughout all of this is that our solidarity is key. Of course, it starts, you know, within your locker room, and then it permeates throughout, you know, our respective organizations, and then throughout the leagues. And then, you know, things like this just strengthen the coalition that exists between the you know, the respective Black player-led organizations throughout all the professional sports. So, you know, obviously when one person is isolated or one person feels as though they're tackling all these issues alone, it's an impossible task. And, you know, that is where people tend to naturally shy away, and understandably shy away. But you know, I think when we're here standing together, it makes, to Madison's point, it can make, you know, the experience a little bit easier for a rookie, so to speak, if, you know, some of the veterans in this, like Justin and myself, are able to support. And that goes across, you know, league lines, and it definitely helps all of us stay stronger when we're opposed.
And you did mention kneeling, Jaleel, and, you know, throughout the summer, we saw both in the Challenge Cup, we saw in USL Championship, USL League One, MLS. I mean, just to start the MLS's back tournament, you had the kneeling for 8 minutes and 47 seconds. But last night, the U.S. women's national team had a friendly against Colombia, and there were some players that kneeled and some players that didn't. And I guess the question that I wanted to put out there was, how did you all feel about not all the players kneeling on Martin Luther King Day?
I think I'll start. As far as kneeling in 2020, the women were the first group to kneel. They were the first, out of all of us, because they started playing first and they set the tone. So I think people need to know and understand that. And then, that gave us a lot of confidence to put forth what we rolled out. And just for me, my personal, where I stand with kneeling, no pun intended, is that it's a personal choice. If I decide to kneel, I'm not looking to my right or my left to see if someone else is kneeling so I can ask them why they didn't kneel after the game. I'm kneeling because I stand for something, and I understand what the repercussions could potentially be because of kneeling, but I don't expect anyone else to do it. So when I saw some of the women kneeling and some of them not kneeling, I think as much as one's prerogative, or as much as one has the right to decide to kneel, people have the right to stand. That's just my personal opinion, though.
Yeah, I appreciate you for raising the point of us coming back and doing kneeling and all that. As far as my opinion on it, I agree. We're all grown adults, and we have the right to make the decision that we want to make. I think personally, I think there's always going to be that question in the back of your head that's like, why didn't you, feel like you wanted to stand up for the Black community? And again, everyone has their own reasons and thoughts for why they are and aren't. And at the end of the day, what I feel like is, if you were 100%, committed to, Black Lives Matter and supporting the Black community, then you'll do what you're going to do to support that. And that may look different for every person. But I think for a lot of us, kneeling is one way to really show solidarity and, stand up against years of oppression in this country. So.
I would just say on that point, yeah, I agree with what you've both said. I think it does have to kind of be each person's choice. You can't force anyone to do anything. And I think also, when you're in a team, your teammate's heart, like maybe what their reasons for. So you maybe, like, to the outside world that's looking in saying, why are you kneeling? If you know your teammate and you know what they're about, you can maybe overlook that, because they stand for something that maybe is different to you, but they're still standing for something that they believe in. So.
Fair points. Madison, Justin, do you have any things you want to add?
I following a lot of the sentiments that have already been said, but I think just you have to, for me personally, I feel like I have to, differentiate between my personal feelings, and at the end of the day, it is their own prerogative on whether or not they kneel or stand. But I guess that whatever you're going to do, stand behind it, and be willing to deal with whatever repercussions come from that, positive or negative, and just being able to articulate your why at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a big point, Madison. When people asked me in the beginning why I was kneeling or why I was not kneeling, I always said that there's lots of ways to fight this battle, and kneeling is just another tool in my tool belt, and that I was going to use every single tool to fight this battle, because I know how big of a fight it is, and we need everything to topple it. So I understand everyone's approaches to it, and there are just lots of ways to fight this battle, and some people aren't there yet. Some people don't feel comfortable fighting it that way. And that's okay, because allies come in all shapes and forms and sizes, and we're going to need all of our allies to stick up with us in different ways. And if kneeling isn't the way that someone's prepared to do it, there are other ways that they can do it.
Yeah, very good points. And yeah, we definitely, with allies, I think the biggest thing is that they actively are trying to support each and every one of us. And, there's been a couple questions that have come in terms of how can we as supporters, how can we as supporters help you out? How can we as supporters either talk to the front office, go out in the community? Like, what are some of the things that, the supporters can do to try and further the message and try and emphasize the point that Black lives do matter?
I feel like, just continuing to amplify the messages that we put out is a huge thing that's helpful for us. I think another thing too would just be like, within your, supporter spaces, just continuing to really push those messages of inclusivity and diversity, because obviously that's what we're pushing for. So we would hope that you're doing that from your standpoint too. And then just, being vocal about any issues, any situations, whether that obviously not in stadiums right now, but whether that be, in stadiums and, whatever you find that seems off or not in alignment with the things that we stand for, I say call it out, be vocal with those things so that we can, address them as needed.
I think one thing that I completely agree, and always amplifying messages is always going to help us. If we're on the train of wearing a certain shirt or something during warm-ups or whatever have you, and you guys are tweeting it out or chanting about it, it's amazing. It's amazing. One thing I personally love from allies is when they just simply just come up with ideas and just say, hey, this is what genuinely makes sense to me. What do you guys think about this? Let's do something. Because although one experiences the negative, they don't always have the exact answer on how to make it right. So those answers and those ideas come from all different types of sources. So I love it when people are saying, hey, like, yeah, this whole situation is fucked up and this is what I think. What do you think? Let's try to make this right together. So it definitely helps when people just jumpstart the conversation of solutions on their own as well.
I completely agree. Sometimes I think it can be very exhausting for people to, come to you and they have completely good intentions, but to not have even an idea, and they just really want to be in earnestness. They just are asking you, what can we do? What can I do? What should I be doing? And it's like, I don't have the answers. I don't know. And sometimes I think that it's just like a very nuanced question, as opposed like spending, a little bit of time thinking about, well, how could we reach a certain solution and presenting it as an idea, as opposed to like, I don't know, what do I do? And it's like, you never have asked me for validation before. Why do you need it now? So I think that that's a really good way to put it, that it's just like, how do you phrase your questioning? How do you approach people with your ideas? Is it something where you want all the answers to be given to you, or do you want to actually collaborate and affect change?
I think it's important for the supporters to keep this at the forefront of their groups and raise this with the clubs. Kyle, I haven't connected with you yet, but I love what you're doing in Madison. Mike Newell in Toronto has been able to create this great group, this TFC BIPOC fan coalition, where they've been able to connect with the club and the front office and let them know how important this is to them. Because at the end of the day, these clubs are businesses and your fans are the customers. And so if it matters to the customers, it's going to matter to the club, what Curtis Jenkins and the Footy Mob have done in Atlanta has been incredible. We haven't connected with them yet, but that's something that's on the forefront of our mind. And we see as players, we see all these different things happening. So I think it's just so important that you continue that message. All of us that are living this every day of our lives, keep it in the forefront of what we're doing and bring it up with your clubs.
I was just going to say something similar to Justin as well, as like the power of the supporter to influence things, you know, like especially like Justin just said, like driving the organization in a particular direction, but then also like being on a team of only a couple of black players, sometimes it can be hard to suggest things to all your teammates who maybe you're not sure if they feel the same way as you. Like you hope they do and you think they might, but you know, for them, you're not sure where they stand, so it can be hard for you to like start pushing things onto them. So when it comes from the supporters, it's a bit easy, you know, because the players love to interact with supporters and stuff like that. And here in Indy, we were fortunate where the fans have definitely driven a lot of things for us and made things happen that maybe we wouldn't be able to get going by ourselves. And then just on a personal note, I would say like after a lot of the tragedies happened last year, the fans, you know, the fans that I'm closer with reached out to me personally. And I think that was something huge to let me know I'm like cared about more than just as a product on the field. Sometimes that's how it can feel, but they reached out to me via text to say, hey, are you okay? Like, how are you feeling? Stuff, little things like that for me goes a long way, because sometimes you can kind of feel like a product, and if you know everything's based on how I perform on the field. So it's nice to know that the fans kind of care about you outside of the football.
Yeah, it's definitely good when more supporter groups are getting involved and more fans in general are taking notice of the matters. And I mean, for me personally, you know, I don't know how far Featherston would have gone without Chris Fox and April Kigea, so I wanted to give a special thanks to them. But one of the things I wanted to throw out there for you all is we've seen the increase both in Black supporter groups, Black fans, but also Black soccer players as well, both professionally and also just, you know, maybe in the streets, just playing out in their neighborhoods. So what does it mean to you to see that growth of, you know, Black people getting more involved in soccer, like I said, whether it's playing, whether it's supporting or being in media?
This is a conversation that one of my teammates and I have often, in that a lot of people in the past, it really has felt like, I can't believe it's already been a year, but in the past year have been asking, oh, why aren't more Black and brown kids playing soccer? And it kind of makes me laugh, because Black and brown kids are playing soccer and they have been playing soccer for a long time. But the problem is like, soccer in the US is such a linear path. You know, at least for the women's game, you know, you play on the best club team and you try to get recruited by the best college. And that is the only way that you're going to really have a chance to play professionally in this league. And so for a lot, that creates so many other issues about resources, economic disparity. Where the best clubs are usually in wealthier suburban areas. And so I think it's just a larger conversation than just why aren't Black and brown kids playing soccer? And I think it's more about like, how do we get those kids to play at the highest level with the best equipment, on the best teams, with the best coaches, just so that there can just be more players like us at this level.
I would definitely agree with that. I coach locally, club soccer, and there may be one Black kid in every team, you know, and it's definitely a case of resources, you know, and I think we need to do a better job of reaching out to places and to people to try and be more inclusive. It's a lot of kids out there playing, but they just can't afford. And as someone, I have 3 kids, you know, and being a coach, I get a discount on my kids. But if it wasn't for the discount, I probably couldn't even afford for my kids to play, you know. And I don't think I'm poor, and I think the prices are really high, and I think it gets worse and worse as you get older. So I think we need to work out ways to try and be more inclusive. So
I think this is a very interesting aspect of, you know, just the soccer experience in America in general, because, you know, my dad, he's from Lagos, Nigeria. So playing any other sport other than soccer was not even a question. Like, but when it comes to a lot of African American households, playing soccer is not even a question. It's like, why would I do that? Because if you're going into, you know, the inner cities of the United States, soccer is not accessible, like Madison and Matthew are saying. It's just simply isn't. There's nowhere to play. There's, you know, there's no one really taking up for the, and it's not necessarily just about race, but like the underprivileged people in our country to access the game, because it simply is a pay to play sport. Like soccer, to get to the highest levels early on is basically like buying into the country club. And it's interesting that that's how it is in America, because in everywhere else around the world, soccer is the most accessible sport. And I think it's just a very interesting aspect of what's going on here. But I think if, people that are at the higher up with more power, and or with a lot of power in our sport, really understood, you know, how many black and brown kids, or just underprivileged kids, really want to play the game but just don't have the resources, it would really change our sport for the better. So I think things are starting to trend in the right direction. But the more work we do like this, and I think the more our generation that's currently playing really puts people on notice to this, I think it can change. But it definitely needs to start happening at faster rates, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think, you made some great points there, about, in a black household, it's like, why soccer? And I think another, point to raise to that is, as a parent, you see, black athletes playing basketball, you see black athletes, playing football. And it's like, I don't oftentimes see representation for someone that looks like me or my child in, a sport like soccer that's, predominantly white. And so I think that's another huge factor there. And, kind of going back to the question that you raised, and the point of like, more black kids, black and brown kids playing soccer. I think it's, I think sometimes people look at it more as like a checkbox kind of quota type thing. Like, oh, well, we have, 4 black kids on our team now. And I think it should be less about that and more about, but is the space really inclusive and supported? Are those kids supported in those spaces? Because I think, then if we're not looking at, the players, are we looking at the coaches? Are we looking at the front offices? Are we looking at, actually truly making these environments, diverse, buzzword everybody likes to use, but are we really making these, spaces inclusive for everybody? Because sure, maybe we have 5 black kids and everybody else around, including the coaches, including, everyone in every level before ahead of that doesn't know how to handle, making a space safe for black kids. So I would say that, anybody that's looking at the point of more kids are playing, are we looking at, is the offices and coaches keeping up with that pace as well?
It's energizing to see the young black kids playing though too, because when I was growing up, I remember my role models. I remember watching Kobe and be like, oh, like the dreads, he's running around, and then Gooch with the braids. And a lot of kids in my neighborhood had braids, like, oh, he looks like us. And then DeMarcus running around. So like for me, I remember that as a kid, and I think that now this is not a stat that I have, but I'm assuming that there are more black players now playing professional than there ever has been before. And I think that this generation of activism within the professional athletes and the way that we're leading this charge it's amazing for these young kids, and they have a lot to look up to. So for that energizes me, because when I see them doing that, I'm like, yes, this is the reason why we're doing all this, and we just want to make something for the next generation so that they can have the access to it, like everyone here has spoken about. I think we all know the problem. It's just about coming together to solve it.
Yeah, and one of the toughest parts, as we see more and more black players coming into their own, we haven't seen that much in terms of coaching. Whether it's the latest batch in the MLS, NWSL, USL, NISA, even, there's just not that many black coaches or black owners. So is that something that you feel like is going to be the next step in terms of trying to increase the game and also try and get those opportunities for everyone? Just because, again, it's such a low turnout in terms of coaching. What are your thoughts on that?
I personally think it's the first step. I think it's like I think it's the biggest thing. at least as far as, you know, as you go higher up in the ranks, it's so influential. I can't even begin to you know, explain, because if I even talk about I can say my professional, college, and youth soccer experience, I've only played for one black coach. So it's just like it's almost like that is, I've never, to this moment right here is the first time I've actually even said that out loud. So it's crazy to even think about. Like, so for my entire professional life, or if you even add like the pursuit of that profession, I've been, you know, I've been mentored or coached by people that don't even understand me fully and thoroughly. And I'm not saying that like none of my coaches haven't ever tried or anything like that, but you know, the one black coach that I had is, you know, a coach that like really understood what I was going through and like reached me at a different level. So just imagine like the reach that it could have had for myself had I had maybe two or three. So you know, it's just one of those things that you can't really, it's really difficult to see yourself exceed anywhere, or to succeed anywhere where like what looks like you isn't there. So a lot of us have been kind of doing this off of sheer determination and sheer dreaming power and just imagination almost. So if you have people that are in front of you every single day and that are telling you, hey, just keep pushing. I was there when you were exactly where you were. It literally makes the difference and can change your entire life.
When you were asking the question earlier about what's the most difficult thing that you've faced so far in this fight, I was going to say that. I was going to say the systemic stuff and the lack of black representation at high coaching positions. That is systemic in Major League Soccer. Just over this past offseason, we had 4 coaching availabilities, and none of them were filled by black people, and it wasn't even really close. And there are people working on that problem, working on solving it, but it's going to take a lot of years. And for me, that's where the biggest pushback or the biggest challenge has been, because when it comes time to effectuate change through policy, through bylaws, that's where the real holdup comes. And you see people and organizations really wanting to be public facing and you know, doing perfunctory messaging and opening up their pocketbooks even, but then when it really comes to the deep stuff, they're not ready to do it yet. And so for me, that's been the biggest challenge, something that will be the legacy of all of our work that we're here today fighting for.
Yeah, you guys both, you know, raised great points there. And, you know, going back to Jalil's point about, you know, black coaches, and then you add the aspect of black women coaches. So luckily for me, I've had 2 black women coaches in my life, and both of them I'm still in contact with. Both of them are mentors to me. I keep in contact with regularly. And like you said, it's so like, I really don't think that anybody who like isn't in a minority really understands the impact that that can have on you. Just, you know, I just remember, you know, the first day, my first black woman coach coming in, and I was like, what? Like, it really is just like so eye-opening, you know? And it's like, wow, like if you've been a professional, and I can do the same thing. And so, yeah, 100%. And I think the other layer of that is, again, it comes down to, you know, accessibility. Do we have pathways for, you know, black men and women playing this sport to take the next step if they want to, you know, become coaches or whatever it is that they want to do in this sport? So I think that, you know, again, that's a systemic thing.
I would just echo everything that's already been said. But also, I feel like sometimes as well, when you have a coach you maybe feel doesn't understand, like, you know, your culture or whatever, you kind of minimize yourself in and around the club and stuff to make yourself a little bit smaller. Feel like I got to tread a tighter path. And I always remember when I was younger, I was at Wolves at like 14, and we had one black coach. And one day I was wearing a basketball jersey, and he pulled me to the side and told me you shouldn't wear that because they're not going to understand, you know. So like, even though he had already got to that coaching position, he felt like he knew he couldn't be himself, and he was kind of warning me the same thing, you know, like try and tread the straight line and come across a certain way. And the couple of black coaches I've interpreted have never been the head coach, they've always been the assistant, but they've always, you know, gave me a little bit more comfort around the place, and they've always seemed to understand me a little bit more. And I've definitely seen cases where black people who maybe didn't walk that tightrope have been misunderstood, and coaches haven't had the patience with them, and they've been gone, you know, like they show a little bit too much aggression or whatever, instead of like maybe trying to see where that stems from, like what's come to make that happen. It's like, okay, this guy's a problem, let's get rid of him, you know. And I think having more black coaches who maybe come from some of those places will give players more chances and more time to play.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I mean, you can see someone like Phil Neville underachieve in England and then somehow gets an Inter Miami job, and you kind of sit there and wonder, was it really even a process? Did they even talk to candidates, especially black candidates? But kind of at the same vein, it's similar to having a black teacher. You know, if you have a black teacher, it makes it a lot easier for you with school, and makes it, you have someone that looks like you and that can relate to you. I know personally, I never had a black teacher growing up, and I think that would have made a huge difference. And I think that's similar for a lot of kids. But in terms of the coaching and the owners, I guess one of the questions I had for the whole panel was going to be, do you feel as though you have the support from your teammates, your coaches, you know, ownership, like front office, for the cause that you're promoting?
I would say I feel like I have the support a lot of the times, but I don't think I have the understanding. Like, I think sometimes when these things happen and we want to get behind something, like everyone's like, yeah, we will, but they don't really seem invested, if you know what I'm saying. Like, everyone's my friends, and so everyone's like, yeah, you want to do it, I'll do it. But like, when you're not really invested, it's a very short-term investment, and then, you know, they're on to the next thing. So I think while the organization and my teammates are supportive, and I think, you know, they're positive people, I just don't necessarily think they're invested or know really what's going on or care to know. And that comes back to the education part and, you know, having more black people in and around the offices. But it seems very like, okay, we're going to jump behind this, but I don't really care why, but I'm down because you're down, you know. And it would be nice, you know, for them to care a little more sometimes.
I feel like in the OL Reign that we are fortunate to have a lot of support from the front office. I think that the biggest theme that I can take away is that all of us are kind of scratching the surface on all of these conversations because they haven't been had before. And for the first time, front offices are having to really consider what their black and brown players want and need to feel supported. And an example I point to is the OL Reign partnered with one of our partners, Boeing. We did our first year of a scholarship for the OL Reign Academy, which gives 2 full scholarships to players of color. And it's a really great initiative, and it's something that I hope to continue to see for as many years as possible. But the scholarship was given to 2 academy players. Like, maybe next year we can turn that into 2 players who aren't from the academy, but from underprivileged areas, who can be invited into academy spaces and just get new experiences and see what it's like to be in a competitive environment. So I would say I do feel a lot of support from our front office. It's just more so the next question is, how do we evolve from here?
Yeah, I would echo, you know, my experience with my club off Madison's. Yeah, I have, I can't say we, in terms of the Black community, have the support from our organization, you know, as far as everything that I've been able to experience and you know, understand. And we'll see how things continue to progress as we move into this year, because like what's been said earlier is, the language of how to approach these things and what is required as the quote unquote bare minimum has completely changed. I'm very optimistic, and also excited at the fact that my club cares and has made that very much known and understood throughout the locker room and the organization, because I know it very much depends on where you even play in these situations, because some owners just straight up don't care. Some teams just don't care. And then, like Justin said earlier, some organizations are very publicly outward facing, but then internally they also don't care. So I think as we move into 2021, we'll start to see who's really about it, and instead of just making statements. So I think this, as far as social justice is concerned, this year is kind of the year of actually getting to work and doing things.
Yeah. Well, and from my rookie experience, it was interesting. For those of you that don't know, I played for Utah Royals, which was part of RSL, Monarchs organization, and I'm sure everyone kind of saw how that unfolded. So coming from that kind of environment where it kind of was a question if the ownership really was worried about the things that we were concerned with. So yeah, I mean, I think that helped me to even find my voice even more. I was pretty vocal throughout all of that, because at the end of the day, I think it's more important to stand up for your community and the things that you stand for than a paycheck in my book. And so I'm looking forward to now joining the Reign. I've heard great things from Madison about the support from their organization, and one of the first things that I had heard from their organization when I had gotten the phone call that I was getting traded was that they supported me and the things that I stood for off the field, and that was really important to me. So yeah, looking forward to, like Jalil said, seeing some action plans from all clubs, all leagues, everybody moving forward into this year.
And then actually we had a question come in for you two, for Madison and Sierra. Where do you feel like there are the most opportunities for female supporters specifically to step up for the female players to help them gain more access to equality and equity in the league?
That's a question right there.
A lot of words in that.
Yeah, I kind of what Madison said earlier. I wish that there was really a definite answer I could say, okay, we need you to do this. But I think bottom line is just continuing to support us again, and like I said earlier, amplifying our message. I don't know. What do you think, Madison?
I think one thing specifically that kind of came to mind is, I guess, just what I had said earlier, just stand up for what you're going to believe in, whether female supporters and male supporters. I think that a lot of people say, I want to support, I want to help. A perfect thing you could do is, interact with more Black female athletes on social media. A lot of Black athletes have their own personal businesses, maybe contribute and buy something from those businesses. I think there are different ways to support the athletes as people in really authentic ways, that carries a lot of weight into like their profession and what we do on the field. So that's kind of something that just rolled in my brain.
I think even, what Matthew had said earlier about reaching out to us. For me personally, I love, the fan interaction and, getting those messages and things from supporters. So just continuing to let us know that, you have our back. We really do appreciate that. And I think that's a huge thing that's pretty simple as well.
Agreed.
I appreciate both of your answers. And the question that I had for all of you is, how did you get into the sport? Like, what got you into it? What made you want to play it?
I can start if you want. I saw a player called Ian Wright who played for Arsenal. He was my favourite team, a black player. And every time he was on the football field, he had so much fun. Like, he played with a smile on his face. He was obviously a fantastic footballer. I don't know if any of you guys know him, but he just made the game seem so fun. Like, that's the reason I wore number 8, like, pretty much my whole career. Like, and you know, that's why we play the game, I think, because we all enjoy it. And like, seeing someone who kind of looked like me out there having fun, that really something that carried with me throughout my career.
I started at a really young age, mostly because my parents needed me to get the hell out of the house. I was too much energy. So my mom, who was handling a lot on her own at the time, because my dad was recently in the police force. He worked night shifts, so he would be asleep during the day a lot. And my mom was like, "No, we gotta get this kid out of the house." So she put me in soccer at a very young age, and it was something that just stuck with me. You know, I played all the sports. I grew up very American in that sense. I played a lot of basketball, played a lot of football. Didn't get to put the pads on, but played a lot of flag football and a lot of pickup football, and ran track. And so I had a taste of everything, but soccer was always my favorite. I loved having the ball at my feet, and so it's something that stuck with me the whole way.
So for me, I have 2 older brothers, and so they're 5 and 6 years older than me. So they were already playing, doing their thing when I came out. So I was like, all right, bet this will be done. So I just kind of, followed in what they were doing. And I honestly didn't even play many other sports growing up. I did dance though, which some might say that's still my area of expertise, but I'm just saying. But yeah, so there was a point in time when I had to decide, like, am I gonna, take the next level with dance or the next level with soccer? And for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. I don't know. I loved the team aspect of it. I loved, just again, like Justin said, having the ball at my feet. And then again, I had a later stint running track. Did not like that at all. I don't know how track runners do that because it's a no for me. But yeah, so it's just always something that I love to do. And anytime I'm away from it, I just remember like why I just love it so much, and I miss it when I'm not there. So yeah.
For me, I grew up playing with the boys. Started out on like co-ed teams, and then I played on some, when I was like really little, played on 3v3 indoor teams with an all boys team. And it was so much fun when you got to school the boys. So transitioned to like outdoor, and it was just super fun. And I think it was just a way to, be competitive and have people who were better than you, but just always really just working hard. And so I think that it just is something that I always was drawn back to. I danced and I played basketball when I was little, but soccer was just like always the constant. And so I think it's just something that, I think back and I'm like, when did I wake up and I was a professional soccer player? Like, I feel like the whole time I was just enjoying the journey, and then you wake up and you're here and you're like, oh, that was fun. I'll keep going.
For me, like I touched on earlier, my dad being from Nigeria, it was a family thing. Soccer is one of the vehicles in which our parents, chose to raise us through. I have 2 older brothers, so it, for me, I was more so interested in how, like, people that weren't from other countries even took to soccer, because for us it was it was our passion by almost like birthright, if you will, So it was like, yeah, so much as being a soccer player is as much as part as me as being Black. So I never even really thought twice about it, because back home in Nigeria, literally everybody knows what's going on with soccer and the national team and this, that, and the third. So, I think even the people back home in Nigeria that can't kick a ball to save their lives will try to consider themselves a soccer player. So it was just part of growing up for me, thankfully.
Those are all great answers. I wish I could have gotten into soccer younger, but as my brother will tell me, I had bad ankles. I had no coordination, so that was never going to be a thing. But the last question I wanted to ask all of you is, what is some advice that you can offer a young Black, either a soccer player or someone that wants to get involved in, the soccer front office or soccer media? What is the one piece of advice you would offer them?
I can start if you want. Probably the most obvious piece of advice: just never give up. I think there's going to be a lot of doors that are closed to you that you're going to have to break down. But I think you can do it. I think the reason that I'm here is because I never gave up. There's many times that maybe even I wanted to give up, but if you keep working hard, and hopefully, some of us and other people can help make those doors go away, but you're gonna have to keep going, and you're definitely gonna face adversity, but you got to keep going. Obviously, as long as you're enjoying it.
I think one thing I would say is you belong. Sometimes we get in these spaces and feel like, singled out or the only one. And I think it's so important to remember that you deserve to be there just as much as, any other kid or any other person or whatever in, whatever area that you want to be in, not even just in soccer and beyond that. And I think the other piece I would say is, if this is something that you really are interested in and invested in, find a supporter, a resource, somebody in your corner that can help you through it. Whether that be sending a DM to, a professional, and maybe it might be a long shot for some, but I think, you'll get a response and a support through that situation, or even if it's, a mentor or a coach or, anybody that supports you and will be in your corner through, the hard times and support you in any way that they can.
I think this one's one that my mom always told me, but it takes a lot of courage to try and fail. So it's better than not trying. And I think that a lot of us, myself included, have, like what Matt was saying, had to go through a lot of closed doors, and sometimes people are opening for me, and a lot of the times I was having to bang it down. So it's something that you just have to be kind of put your head down and do the work, and it's worth it at the end of the day.
For me, I would say don't sacrifice any of who you are as a person to get to where you're going. I just feel, because of the nature of our sport in North America, that there are a lot of young kids that try to fit in by muting parts of themselves, and it's sad to see. And I just want to empower those kids to be all of themselves, because that's what makes it so special. That's what this community is about. That's what this game is about, and it's for all. And so, yeah, that's important to me. I want those kids to know that.
Yeah, I just have two things. And my first one is an offshoot of what Justin just said and what Ziara said as well, is that, you always have something special to offer that no one else has to offer. But the people that can find their way into whatever job or whatever situation that they're trying to finesse into, they are the ones that really own it and tap into it, and then present that to the world in the way that it's supposed to be presented. So I guess it's just a different way of, yeah, not censoring any part of yourself and understanding that you belong. But I think oftentimes we kind of, cut ourselves, we cut our knees out from underneath us before we even walk into the door by trying to say, oh, well, maybe they aren't going to like my haircut or my glasses or my earbuds or whatever. But if you flip it the other way around, then oftentimes you're ahead. And then I would say what has really, I think, maybe helped me along the way is to just like get to know people before you like either judge them or judge yourself by being in front of them. Just get to know people, because people are, you know, we're all much more fragile than we realize and much stronger than we think. So whenever you're around people, just try to get to know them, and then the next time you see them, you never know what that could lead to, and it broadens your perspective as well. So yeah, that's just a long-winded way of saying you're pretty dope if you tap into it.
All of that was excellent advice. I applaud each and every one of you for your answers. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time and explaining yourself, like explaining your stories, explaining your path, giving as much advice as possible in your perspective. And for those that are out there, myself included, I think we have to also realize that, there's a growing contingent of Black supporters, Black players, Black fans, etc. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is try and amplify the message as best as possible. So my advice for everyone that wants to be an ally is reach out, try and help. It's better and put good intentions to it. Don't do it for your own personal gain. Don't do it to try and pat yourself on the back. Try and do it to make sure to help others out there. And for that, I thank everyone for their time, and we will see you again, and just stay safe out there. Thanks.